All right, welcome back. It's part two, everyone. Thanks for coming by. We're finishing up our gorgeous flower painting. We're doing a limited palette. So basically, if you haven't seen part one, please go back, see part one. It kind of gets you up to speed on how we did the preliminary drawing, the contour drawing, and then how we laid out our colors. For our limited palette here on this painting of flowers. And if you see part one, it'll get you up to speed, and then we'll start up again here now, and we'll finish up this painting. So if for some reason you can't find part one and you're on part two, we'll just do a quick, fast, kind of like a quick walkthrough of what part one was about. So part one, we created our preliminary drawing, which was a super light sketch of this vase with flowers. We're working from this previous composition that we did, this watercolor painting we did. So we're working from this. We're using this as our blueprint to create this painting that we're working on now. So essentially, this is what we're going to try to replicate. So what we did was we set this up across from us, this on our table, art table here, and we did a super light preliminary sketch just to make sure that we got all the proportions correct and where the table is, make sure it all fits within this rectangle we're working in here, the borders of our picture, our painting. Once we did that super light sketch, then we went in and we did our contour drawing, which is basically going in and doing a finished drawing and just getting all the more of the details of that painting that we looked at. Now, if you wanted to, you could take this painting and take a picture of it. You can pause the you can pause your video and take a picture of it, or essentially that's the best way to do it. I know I've many times I've taken pictures of pictures on TV. So a lot of times I'll take pictures from my TV screen, or I'll also take pictures of YouTube videos. Sometimes I'll stop a video in the middle if I see something that I want to try to draw and paint, and then I'll take a picture of it and then print it on printer paper, or I'll just leave it on my electronic device, whether it's my phone or my laptop, and I can work from it from there. Or you can just pause the video if you have a laptop or an iPad or a cell phone. You can actually just pause your phone on this YouTube video and work from that. So, or you can just find a picture you like and just kind of use the same idea of what we're doing here. So as an artist, you're creative. You can come up with all different ways to get to the same end result of what we're working on here, which is basically, again, the limited palette, painting flowers in a still life painting. So here again, just getting up to speed, we decided we're just going to do a few colors. We're not going to use the whole palette of colors. We're going to use just a few. So essentially, we kind of said we were going to use like a green, a gold color, and a blue for our three colors, essentially. But we were going to add in a little bit of like some red and some purple over here, just a little tiny bit for the flowers. But essentially that was going to be our three colors, so that would be our limited palette idea. But within these three colors, we do have in our palette quite a, we have three blues: cerulean, cobalt, and French ultramarine. So even though we're just going to call this like a blue color, we do have some variation in that blue, so that's really good. And then again, we did the same with the gold. You can see we have cadmium yellow, cadmium lemon yellow, raw sienna, yellow ochre, burnt umber, burnt sienna for our warmer colors, our golden colors, earth tones. And again, the greens too. We have three greens. We have actually four: sap green, olive green, viridian green, and a little bit of chromium oxide. So when we say we're going to use green, we actually have four to choose from right in here. And that'll give us some nice variation, but essentially it is all, the green color. So that's our quick up to speed, and now let's get right back into our painting. And we're just using fresh water and working right from our palette. And we'll continue here, and then I'm going to some more cerulean here. And I'm thinking of maybe I'm just going to do some negative shape painting around these flower shapes here. Okay, now I'm going to use more of a warmer color. Let me go with a burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and a little bit of cerulean. A little bit of iridium. And I'll do this side of the vase. And then here I'm going to just try to fade the color over. So I just rinse my brush and then dry it off a little bit with some tissue or paper towel, like that. And just give it a little more lighter tone on this side of the vase. And then we can take a little bit of cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and French ultramarine, and maybe just do a little mystery color over here. This could be something outside the window. And then let's go in, let's do some burnt umber and sap green. Now we're gonna do some mixing now. So some burnt sienna, burnt umber, a little bit of sap green, and some cobalt blue, and maybe leave in a little. That's good. That should be good right there. So we have a nice little bit of interesting color here, and we'll do that for the table. So this is a table that. And we just take our time with our brushwork. Now, to get a little more interesting feel, let's maybe go with a little more cerulean blue into that mix. We'll make it a little darker under here. And again, just take your time with your brush strokes. And we'll go with some burnt umber mixed in, a little more of a brownish color. Then we can get some olive green. So if you're sticking with the same colors in a limited palette, you can do a lot of mixing of the colors, and you're not going to have a problem really so much, because everything harmonizes because you're only using you're using a limited palette. So now if you want to add some variation to this section right here, you can dry off your brush, you rinse your brush, dry off your brush, and then you can lift a little paint like that here and there. Maybe a little bit of mystery light, just here and there. Then you can do You can do some blue, and you can go in and just pick up little touches of color. To make it a little interesting. And you can kind of fade it in and mix it in a little bit so it's not so drastic, but that little bit of extra colors here and there does add a lot to the painting, in my opinion. And you can even go in with some really cool darks, some French ultramarine blue and burnt umber along certain sections here to just accentuate the lines of the table. The table is comprised of different wood structures that are all glued and nailed together. Since we're using a limited palette, let me just fade those colors out a little more. I think I got off a little bit off track here, but I was trying to keep the palette more limited. That's not a problem. Some more mystery light with some taps. All right, so good. We're back on track here. And then let's just do the same idea. And now I'm just going to go a little quicker, pick up some paint. And again, we're sticking with the idea of a limited palette. So I'm not going in with a lot of colors, just basically the colors that we originally set out on the palette. Green, blue, and gold. And what's good about using good paper, this is Arches paper. What's great about using great paper like Arches or Fabriano, or there's a lot of good papers on the market. I use Fabriano and Arches mostly for demos like this or finished paintings and even practice. Is you can keep working the paint and the water on your paper and you're not going to have a problem. Whereas sometimes if you use lesser quality papers, you are going to have a problem trying to mix a lot and do a lot of mixing and reworking on your painting as you go. So please always keep that in mind when you're doing your watercolor paintings, that if you buy the top quality Arches or let's say Fabriano, you're going to have more ability to do a lot of mixing and adding colors and mixing things around. And whereas again, a less quality paper is going to give you some trouble. So trying to do this type of technique. So with techniques like mine, you do have to use really good paper. I've probably mentioned this a number of times on other videos, but it really is something to really key in on, because if you try doing doing this type of painting and then reworking and adding in colors and mixing on the paper itself, you'll have a really difficult time with inexpensive paper. You'll wind up the paper will wind up having issues, and you'll have a lot of funny looking marks on your watercolor paper, on your painting. So just something to keep in mind. It is one of those things with watercolor painting. Better papers definitely give you a lot better results. And I don't do any advertising or anything with any of the paper companies or anything like that. I'm just kind of really, you'll hear most artists say that. Professional artists will always tell you that the better the paper you use, the way better results you get with your paintings, especially if you like to go in and do a lot of touching up, rework, adding in colors. No question about it that, what I used to do is I used to take paper and practice with it and do the same things on an inexpensive paper and then on an expensive paper, like Arches or Fabriano. And I would always get way better results on the really good paper. So just a thing to add to the notebook. And let's keep going here. We're going to do some flowers here. So here I get my flower shape in the center, and then I slowly fade it out with a drier brush. I rinse my brush off, dry it off a little, and then you can take that and kind of get that nice look of, so it's a little darker in here, a little bit of blue. Okay, we'll keep. All right, so now that we pretty much have the idea of our game plan here, I'm going to pick up the pace and go a little quicker, just so we can finish up. And so these are the other, some of the other flower shapes up here. Get some green, sap green. I'm going to get some stem color, so that would be French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and a little bit of sap green. And I'll just do some quick flicks of some stems and interesting shapes for. And again, you can take your time doing this more, you know, as far as. Then we have a wire, a handle on this vase. Okay, and some cerulean blue. I'll do some splashes here. All right, that's pretty much I'm happy with this now. What I want to do is I'm going to get the window color, some cerulean blue, burnt umber, and we'll do some nice fun loose. So we're not going to get too cobalt blue, maybe. So we'll change up the color of our. Plenty of water. We use our needlepoint brush. You can take your time a little more, or if you like it more of a looser looking painting, a more freer, fun painting, you can go fast with these lines, and it's up to you how you want your finished painting to look. But I think this looks pretty good. It looks pretty convincing. Outside, maybe there's some branches and trees out here, so we see those through the window a little bit. A little bit of cad lemon yellow. So here you can add a little more color. This was a little, quite a bit of a low-key painting. I don't know if that's convincing with the bushes outside the window. If you don't think it looks that great, you can always blot up a little bit to make it less, just maybe more of a suggestive look. And then get back in with a darker, some more burnt umber, French ultramarine blue. A little bit of green. And then you can maybe add a couple darker touches of color here and there. Gives you that kind of light feel where you see some things are, the tonal values are changing, the light is kind of playing with the dark and lightness of the frames of the window panes. All right, so this is a good completed painting here. We're doing a composition here. It's a smaller painting. You can take this idea and make it a large painting, like an 18 by 24, have more fun with it. Just remember, if you're going to do a larger painting, you just got to use a bigger palette, bigger brushes, and more paint and water. So that's just all about practicing scaling up. So never get discouraged if you try doing a large painting and it doesn't come out good. It takes a lot of time actually in practice to be able to do a larger painting, because you're just basically, everything changes. The time, your rhythm of how you're painting, your time it takes to do different passages on the painting and so forth. So for those of you who do want to start up, kind of like creating larger paintings from these smaller compositions that we're doing, you definitely have to remember that it takes a lot of practice to accomplish larger paintings, because again, you're scaling everything up: brush sizes, palette size. You're using more paint, more water, and also your drying times are going to be different too. Working in a more concentrated area like this on a smaller painting is easier to paint that way, and it's a good way to learn a lot about the watercolor medium. And then once you start going to a larger painting size, then that's like a whole nother way of painting. So that takes time and practice. And so this looks pretty good. Hope everyone had a fun time, had a great time here. We're doing a nice limited palette style painting. We'll be back soon and we'll do some more fun and fantastic painting with watercolors. We'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.